Hello friends, on August 6th in Poland, a Blitz match of 6 games took place between the reigning world chess champion Dommaraju Gukesh and Poland's best Grandmaster Jan-Krzysztof Duda. The Grandmasters played with a time control of 3 minutes plus a 2-second increment, but I suggest we first take a closer look at one of the games from this encounter and then discuss the overall match results. The battle began with the knights coming out. Gukesh offered his opponent the chance to enter the symmetrical variation of the English opening, but Jan chose the Indian defense against the Indian, as if to say, "You play on my turf, and I'll play on yours." White seized the center. After the move knight to d7 came knight to c3, then Duda struck at the center. Gukesh created a fianchetto, setting his bishop to fire long-range shots at his opponent's queen side. Jan-Krzysztof prepared to castle. White did the same. The kings were evacuated to safety, the rooks were centralized, and Dommaraju made it look like he wanted to bring out his other bishop to the main road. Jan-Krzysztof tightened his grip on the central squares, opening the doors for his queen. Gukesh placed another pawn in the center. The Polish Grandmaster cleared the view for his rook, casting a cunning glance at a pawn. White brought in another defender. Black began plotting trouble on the queen side. Dommaraju claimed space. Duda exchanged pawns and advanced his pawn along the b file. The computer says the better move would have been to reposition the bishop, which was blocked by its own pawn on f1, to a square where it could either queenside, the very sector where an armed conflict was brewing. Instead, the Indian Grandmaster locked the pawn on b5, preventing it from moving, and planned an attack along the f-file. On a human level, the move looked logical, but the problem was that now the black knight could sneak in like an old winter coat toward White's weak light squares. Dommaraju completed his plan with the idea of creating weaknesses either on b5 or on r6. Duda defended the pawn with his bishop. White exchanged pieces and pinned the knight, protecting his rook. An attempt to occupy the weak c4 square with a knight would have brought nothing here, as White could play knight to b2, followed by bishop to f1, and black would hardly be able to hold the conquered height. So, in our game, Duda redirected his knight elsewhere, aiming to create a distant passed pawn in case of exchanges. Gukesh defended his knight, connected his rooks, and attacked the pawn on b5. Black exchanged, and in order to avoid a ruined pawn structure after a queen trade, he kept his position solid. White should have swept the rooks off the board, then traded the knight that was pressing on the central pawn, and invaded the 7th rank, leading to roughly equal play. In our game, the world champion defended the pawn with his queen, anticipating heavy piece exchanges. The Polish Grandmaster drove away the bishop and activated his strongest piece, establishing rook communication. White attacks the queen and prevents the bishop and knight from moving to g4. But now black doubled his rooks on the open file and began working over White's weak pawns. It turned out that if White captured on r4, the pawn on the b file would be exposed, and how to defend it was unclear. After rook to b1, black attacked the queen, attacked again, and won the central pawn. If White had defended it with the bishop, black would still play bishop to b5, seizing the open file without contest. The pawns on b4 when e4 were weak, and black had the advantage. Considering this, in our game Dommaraju decided not to fight for the pawn and instead played knight to d2, aiming to activate his piece. From the computer's point of view, the decision was correct, but let's watch the game unfold. Duda, of course, wanted to exchange pieces, because in the endgame he would have an extra pawn, and a distant passer at that. Gukesh moved his king to h2, and after the rook exchange, Duda placed his queen behind the passed pawn. Gradually, White's position worsened, as all his activity on the queen side ran into a dead end, and he was a pawn down. Dommaraju launched a psychological attack, and Jan-Krzysztof exchanged another pair of pieces, and, as the saying goes, get the ladies out. Because what else can you do to stop a passed pawn? The computer says White should have played queen to b1, although his position still looked grim. In our game, the Indian Grandmaster tried to hold the pawn with his rook. Duda attacked the strongest piece and pushed his pawn deeper. After rook to b2, he said, "Let's trade rooks." The toughest defense would have been rook to b1, but instead Gukesh exchanged rooks, relying on his calculation skills. He planned that after queen to b1, He could restore material balance by exploiting a diagonal pin. But, as Savili Daktakoyer once said, against weakness, even the gods themselves are powerless. First, white lost the pawn on the b file, and now the black knight chopped down the central pawn as if it were a pine tree. It turned out that if white captured this pawn, black would promote another queen while attacking, gaining a decisive material advantage. In the game continuation, after bishop to d3, the completely enraged black knight smashed through on f2, distracting the bishop from protecting c1. On top of that, a checkmate in one was looming. If white captured the knight, black would promote a queen and win with a massive material edge. If the king retreated to g2 to avoid mate, black would crash through on d3 with the same result. Given these variations, on move 38, Dommaraju Gukesh resigned. And that, my friends, is how a world champion got rolled over like a club player. On top of that, the match itself ended with a crushing 5-1 score in favor of the world's number 23, Jan-Krzysztof Duda. Write in the comments what you think about this game, hit the like button, and ring the bell, because chess is awesome.